Clara stepped out of the store, gripping the cold soda bottle in her good hand. The heat outside hit her like a heavy blanket. It was still so hot, but at least she had something cold to drink now. She took a deep breath, letting out a little sigh. The tension she had felt in the store was starting to fade. She had done the right thing. That biker had tried to steal and she had called him out. That was the truth. Her house wasn't far, just a short 10-minute walk past a few streets and a small park. She had walked this way many times before, so she wasn't worried. Even after what had happened in the store, she didn't feel scared. That man had been thrown out like the trash he was. She had stood up to him, and two huge guys, John Cena and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, had her back. She smiled a little to herself and took a sip of her soda. The ice-cold liquid felt amazing on such a hot day. She could feel it cool her throat as she swallowed. The street was quiet. The only sound was the soft hum of cars passing by every now and then. A few houses down, an older man was watering his lawn, moving his hose slowly back and forth. His white dog lay in the shade of a tree, barely lifting its head in the heat. Everything seemed peaceful. But then Clara got a strange feeling in her chest. It wasn't fear. Not yet. It was like the feeling you get when you just know someone is staring at you, even when you haven't seen them. She glanced over her shoulder. Nothing. The sidewalk was empty. The old man was still watering his plants. No one else was behind her. She shook her head. Maybe she was just tense after what had happened in the store. That must be it. She took another sip of her soda, telling herself to relax. She kept walking. Then she heard a sound. A low, distant rumbling. It was quiet at first, just blending into the background noise of the city. But something about it made her uneasy. It wasn't like the sound of a regular car passing by. It was steady, slow. She walked a little faster. Her house wasn't far now, just a few more blocks past the park. The sound got louder. Clara's fingers tightened around her soda bottle. She turned her head to look back. A motorcycle had turned the corner behind her. The rider wore a black helmet. His face was hidden. Clara's heart beat a little faster, but she told herself it was okay. Lots of people rode motorcycles. It didn't mean anything. Then another bike appeared. Then a third. Clara felt a cold shiver run down her spine. This wasn't normal. They weren't zooming past her like people usually did on motorcycles. They were staying behind her. Moving slow. Too slow. She turned forward again, forcing herself to keep walking. Faster now. She could see the park ahead. After that, just one more street and she would be home. But the motorcycles didn't pass her. They stayed behind. She could hear the engines growling softly, like wolves creeping through the night, waiting to strike. Her breath quickened. She was close now. Just past the park and she'd be safe. She forced herself not to run. Running might make it worse. Just walk. Just get home. Then she reached the park. She was almost there. And that's when she saw them. 4 men stepped out from behind the trees. Clara stopped. They stood in the grass, blocking her way. They wore heavy jackets. Their boots were thick and dusty. And in front of them, staring straight at her with pure anger in his eyes, was him. The biker from the store. Her stomach dropped. His face was twisted in a mean, ugly sneer. He looked at her the way a wolf looks at a rabbit before it pounces. Well, he said, his voice dripping with fake sweetness. Look who we have here. Clara gripped her soda bottle tighter. She took a step back. The motorcycles behind her slowed down even more, their engines growling softly. She was trapped. Her mind raced. She could turn and run, but where? She wouldn't make it home before they caught her. She could scream, but what if no one was around to hear her? The biker took a slow step toward her. You got a big mouth, kid, he said. Think you can embarrass me in front of all those people? His voice was low and dangerous. The other men behind him chuckled, watching her like she was some kind of joke. Clara swallowed hard. Her heart was pounding so fast she could hear it in her ears. She had faced him before. She had called him out in the store. She had stood her ground. But this was different. Now there were no cameras. No people watching. No John Cena. No Dwayne Johnson. Just her. And them. The biker took another step closer. You should have kept quiet, he muttered. Now, I gotta teach you a lesson. Clara's legs were shaking, but she refused to look scared. She straightened her shoulders. I'm not afraid of you, she said. Her voice was steady. The biker laughed. His friends laughed too. Oh, you're not afraid? He mocked. That's funny. Clara's eyes darted around. She needed a way out. The park was mostly empty. No one was around except for a few birds hopping on the grass. The road was too far. Her house was too far. She felt trapped. The biker raised a hand like he was about to grab her. She acted fast. With all her strength, she threw her soda bottle straight at his face. Crack. The bottle hit him right on the nose. Cold soda exploded all over him. "Erdich," he shouted, stumbling back. For a second, everyone froze. Then Clara turned and ran. She didn't look back. She sprinted as fast as she could, her feet pounding against the sidewalk. She heard the men yelling behind her. She heard the motorcycles revving. But she didn't stop. She darted through the park, zigzagging between the trees, hoping to lose them. Her chest burned. Her legs ached. But she couldn't stop now. Her house was so close. She could see the street ahead. She could see the row of houses. She could see. A black car screeched to a stop right in front of her. Her heart jumped. The door flew open. A deep, familiar voice called out, "Get in." Clara didn't hesitate. She dove into the car. The door slammed shut behind her. The car sped off. She gasped for breath, her heart still racing. She looked up. John Cena was in the driver's seat. Dwayne Johnson was beside him, turning to look at her. "You okay, kid?" he asked. Clara's hands were shaking. She took a deep breath. Then she nodded. "Yeah," she said. "I think so." Cena's jaw tightened as he glanced in the rearview mirror. Dwayne cracked his knuckles. The motorcycles were still behind them. "This ain't over," Cena muttered. Dwayne smirked. "No," he said. "It's just getting started." Clara's stomach sank. She had been so focused on the motorcycles behind her that she didn't realize they had tricked her. The leader of the bikers grinned and cracked his knuckles. "Told you we'd meet again, didn't I?" Clara's heart pounded. She wanted to run, but her feet wouldn't move. The engines behind her got louder. She looked back, the bikes had stopped and the riders were getting off. She was surrounded. The leader stepped closer. "Not so tough now, huh?" Clara clenched her fists. She wouldn't beg. She wouldn't cry. "You brought friends?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "What, too scared to face me alone?" The other bikers laughed. A tall, skinny man with a scar on his cheek smirked. "This little brat has a big mouth." Another biker, big and strong, cracked his neck. "Maybe we should help her shut it." Clara's heart raced, but she didn't show fear. The leader's grin turned mean. "See, I don't like being embarrassed, kid. And today you embarrassed me real bad." Clara took a small step back. "Oh no, don't run," the leader warned, wagging a finger. "We just want to talk." She didn't believe him. Not for a second. Her house was right there, just past the park. If she could get through them, she could be safe. But before she could move, the leader lunged and grabbed her injured arm. Pain shot through her cast. She screamed. "Where's that attitude now?" he growled. Clara gasped, trying not to cry. The pain was horrible. "Let me go," she said through gritted teeth. The leader twisted her arm, making her whimper. "Oh, I don't think so. I like watching you squirm." The other bikers laughed. Then a deep voice boomed across the park. "Hey, scumbags." The bikers spun around. Standing at the sidewalk, tall and strong, were John Cena and Dwayne Johnson. Cena stepped forward, rolling his shoulders, his fists already clenched. Dwayne's face was full of anger. "4 grown men against one little girl?" Cena said in a low, dangerous voice. "That makes you the toughest guys in town?" Clara let out a shaky breath, feeling a bit of relief. The leader loosened his grip, stepping back. His cocky smirk wavered. "This ain't your business, big guy," he said. Dwayne tilted his head. "Oh, but it is." The scarred biker spit on the ground. "What? You two think you can take all of us?" Cena took a deep breath and smiled. "That's exactly what we think." One of the bikers, the big stocky one, pulled out a chain and wrapped it around his knuckles. Another pulled a switchblade from his pocket and flipped it open. The leader sneered. "You're outnumbered." Dwayne cracked his knuckles. "Are you sure about that?" Clara held her aching arm and took a step back. For a second, everything was still. Then the bikers charged. Cena and Dwayne moved like a storm. The first biker swung his chain-covered fist at Cena, but Cena dodged. Before the biker could react, Cena grabbed his wrist and yanked him forward. Bam! He kneed the biker in the stomach. The man gasped, doubling over. Then wham! Cena tossed him onto the ground hard. Dwayne was already fighting another biker, the one with the knife. The man slashed at Dwayne, but Dwayne dodged and grabbed his wrist. Before the biker could react, crack! Dwayne smashed his other fist into the man's arm. The knife fell to the ground. The biker screamed in pain, stumbling back. But Dwayne wasn't done. Bam! He elbowed the man in the jaw, knocking him flat on his back. The leader of the bikers, the one who had hurt Clara, stood frozen for a second. Then his face twisted with anger. He grabbed Clara by the collar and yanked her close. "Back off," he yelled, "or I swear I'll—" He never got to finish. Cena exploded into action. In a flash, he grabbed the leader's arm and twisted it away from Clara. His grip broke instantly and Clara stumbled back. Before the biker could react, boom. Cena lifted him off the ground and slammed him onto the pavement with a huge move. The ground shook from the impact. Dwayne turned just in time to see the last biker, the skinny one with the scar, running at him with a rusty crowbar. The biker swung the crowbar at Dwayne's head, but Dwayne ducked just in time. The swing made the biker lose balance. Dwayne smirked. Then he punched the biker in the face with a powerful right hook. The biker collapsed, hitting the ground like a sack of bricks. The crowbar clattered uselessly on the pavement. In less than a minute, all 4 bikers were on the ground, groaning in pain. Cena turned to Clara, his brows furrowed. "You okay?" Clara nodded, holding her arm. "Yeah, I think so." Dwayne rolled his shoulders, stepping over one of the fallen bikers. That was almost too easy. But the leader, still coughing from the slam, suddenly chuckled. He wiped blood from his lip and grinned. "You think this is over?" he sneered. Cena narrowed his eyes. "You still want more?" But then, sirens. Red and blue lights flashed in the night. Police cars sped into the park, tires screeching. Someone must have called the cops. Officers jumped out of their cars, weapons drawn. "Freeze. Hands up." Cena and Dwayne raised their hands right away, stepping back. Clara did the same, still holding her arm. The officers rushed in, pinning the groaning bikers to the ground and handcuffing them. One officer looked at the fallen men and whistled. "Looks like someone already did our job for us." Another officer walked up to Cena and Dwayne. He recognized them immediately. "You two want to tell me what happened here?" Dwayne nodded toward Clara. "They attacked her. We stepped in." The officer looked at the bikers, then at Clara. "That's true, kid?" Clara lifted her chin and said firmly, "They tried to hurt me. They were waiting for me outside my house." The officer's face darkened. He waved at his team. "Get them out of here." As the cops dragged the bikers to the police cars, the leader snarled at Clara one last time. "You got lucky," he hissed. Clara didn't even blink. "No," she said. "You got caught." The officer shoved him into the car. The door slammed shut. Cena put his hand on Clara's shoulder. "You sure you're okay?" Clara nodded but winced as she moved her hurt arm. A police officer walked over, looking calmer now. "She should get that checked out," he said, pointing at her cast. Dwayne crossed his arms. "We'll make sure she does." The officer hesitated, then nodded. "Thanks for whatever you did here." Cena smirked. "No problem." The police cars drove away, taking the bikers with them. The park was finally quiet. The night air was still warm, but it didn't feel heavy anymore. Clara let out a deep breath. "That was intense." Dwayne chuckled. "That's one way to put it." Cena looked at her. "You're one tough kid." She grinned. "So I've been told." Dwayne tilted his head. "Want us to walk you home?" Clara shook her head. "Nah, I live right there." She pointed to a house just a few steps away. "I'll be fine." Cena nodded. "Good. But if anyone messes with you again." Clara smirked. "I'll handle it." Dwayne and Cena exchanged amused glances. Then Cena held out his fist. "Respect." She fist bumped him, then did the same with Dwayne. They watched as she walked toward her house, standing tall and confident. Dwayne exhaled. "She's gonna be just fine." Cena smirked. "Yeah, but I don't think those bikers will be." They both laughed and turned toward the city. The night was calm again. Clara stood on the sidewalk, watching the police cars disappear down the street. Their flashing lights faded into the distance. The park was quiet again. The warm night air still held some of the tension from what had happened. Clara's heart was still pounding, but she wasn't scared anymore. The bikers were gone, locked up, and she had made it through in one piece. She turned toward her house. It was only a few steps away, but she took her time. Her arm throbbed from where the biker had grabbed her cast, but she ignored it. She had been through worse. Right now, all she wanted was to go inside, grab a cold drink, and let it all sink in. She stepped onto her front lawn, feeling the cool grass under her sneakers. She let out a small sigh. It was over. Then, a rustling sound behind her made her freeze. Her muscles tensed. She turned. 2 figures stepped out from the shadows near the sidewalk. Her stomach dropped. One of them was him. The leader of the bikers. The one she had embarrassed at the store. The one who had just been taken away in handcuffs. But now he was standing right there, his eyes full of anger. His lips curled in a snarl. And he wasn't alone. 3 more bikers stood with him. They were different from the ones Cena and Dwayne had fought earlier. They were bigger, meaner. Their leather jackets were covered in patches. Their faces were hard and serious. Clara's throat went dry. How was this possible? How had he gotten out so fast? The leader must have seen the question in her eyes because he sneered. Did you really think I'd let the cops decide how this ends? Clara wanted to run, but her feet wouldn't move. The leader took a step forward. You humiliated me, he said. Got my guys arrested. And for what? Because you didn't know when to keep your mouth shut? The biggest of the new bikers, a huge man with a thick beard and a scar on his temple, cracked his knuckles. She's the reason our boys are in jail, he said, his voice deep and slow. The leader didn't look away from Clara. She's the reason I had to call them. The bearded man's expression darkened. Then we'll deal with her. Clara's heart pounded in her ears. She took a step back. The biker stepped forward, blocking every way she could escape. She tried to keep her voice steady. 4 grown men against 1 kid? Are you guys really that pathetic? The bearded man smirked. Gotta teach you a lesson, little girl. The leader lunged forward and grabbed her arm again, squeezing her cast. Pain shot through her. She gasped. A car drove by on the street. She wanted to scream for help, but the biker yanked her closer, keeping her hidden in the shadows of the trees. Her stomach clenched. This was bad. Then, a voice like thunder shattered the night. Hey, get your hands off her. The biker spun around. Standing at the end of the sidewalk, eyes full of fury, John Cena. And next to him, just as angry, Dwayne Johnson. The leader cursed under his breath. You've got to be kidding me. Cena took a step forward, rolling his shoulders. Didn't get enough of a beating the first time? The bearded biker chuckled. You think you two can take all of us? Dwayne scoffed. That's exactly what we think. The bikers hesitated. Then all at once, they charged. The first biker swung a wild punch at Cena. Cena caught his wrist in midair, twisted it behind his back, and slammed him face first into a mailbox. The metal dented from the impact. The biker collapsed, unconscious. Dwayne didn't wait. The second biker tried to grab him from behind, but Dwayne flipped him over his shoulder like he weighed nothing. The biker hit the pavement hard, groaning in pain. The bearded man was faster. He threw a brutal kick at Cena's ribs. Cena took the hit, then countered with a powerful uppercut. The bearded man staggered backward. Before he could recover, Cena grabbed him, lifted him high into the air, and slammed him onto the ground. The last biker, the leader, tried to run. Dwayne saw it instantly. 2 massive strides. He grabbed the leader's jacket, yanked him back. The leader stumbled. Dwayne spun him around and delivered a brutal clothesline. The leader flipped in the air before crashing onto the pavement. Silence. All 4 bikers, on the ground, unconscious, groaning in pain. Cena exhaled, shaking out his fists. Not much of a lesson, huh? Dwayne cracked his neck. Guess they don't learn. Clara stood frozen, staring at the chaos around her. Then, just like before, police sirens. Cena chuckled. They're gonna love explaining this. Police cars pulled up fast. Tires screeched. Officers jumped out. Guns drawn. On the ground. Hands behind your heads. The bikers didn't resist. They couldn't. One officer walked up to Cena and Dwayne, looking between them and the unconscious men. Let me guess, the officer said. They started it? Cena smirked. You're catching on. Dwayne gently nudged Clara. You okay? She took a deep breath, then nodded. Yeah. Another police officer walked up, shaking his head as the bikers were handcuffed and put into police cars. This time they won't get away, he said firmly. Clara looked at the leader of the bikers as he was pushed into the car. His angry glare was gone. She gave him a small, proud smile. Told you. You got caught. The car door slammed shut. John Cena and Dwayne Johnson watched as the last police cars drove away. The flashing lights disappeared down the road, and the night became quiet again. Dwayne let out a deep breath. Now it's over. Cena glanced at Clara. You sure you don't need to check that arm? She moved her fingers, winced a little, then grinned. Nah, I'm good. Dwayne chuckled. Toughest kid I've ever met. Cena held out his fist. Respect. Clara fist bumped both of them. Standing tall, she said, You guys are all right. Then, with her shoulders back and head high, she walked toward her house. Dwayne watched her go and crossed his arms. She's going to be just fine. Cena smirked. Yeah. And I don't think those guys will try anything again. They both laughed and walked back toward the city. The night was finally calm. Clara stood at her doorstep, watching Cena and Dwayne disappear down the street. The police sirens had faded, and the air was finally still. For the first time since she had left the store earlier that night, she felt relief. It was really over. The bikers were gone, taken away in handcuffs, and she was still standing. She stepped inside and closed the door with a quiet click. The dim hallway light made long shadows on the wall as she walked to the kitchen. Her heart was still beating fast, and her hands trembled a little as she reached for a glass. She filled it with water and took a slow sip. The cool water helped calm her down. She put the glass down and let out a deep breath. She had faced a group of grown men twice in one night, and she had won. Of course, she wasn't alone. Cena and Dwayne had helped her. But she had never backed down. Not in the store. Not when they surrounded her. Not even when the leader grabbed her again. A small smile appeared on her lips. She hadn't let them scare her. She walked over to the small mirror in the hallway and looked at herself. Her face had a little dirt on it. There was a faint red mark on her wrist where the biker had grabbed her. But her eyes were steady, strong. She didn't look like someone who had been scared. She looked like someone who had stood her ground. The house was quiet. The neighborhood was peaceful. It was strange how fast everything had gone back to normal. Just hours ago, she had been walking home with a soda, not knowing what was about to happen. And now she had lived through one of the craziest nights of her life. She turned on the kitchen faucet and splashed cold water on her face, washing away the last bit of fear. Her arm still ached from where the biker had squeezed it over her cast, but the pain didn't matter. It would heal. She thought back to the moment she had stood up to the biker in the store. The way he had looked at her, like she was nothing. The way he had laughed at her, trying to scare her. But in the end, he was the one dragged away by the police. That thought made her grin. She knew guys like him always thought they could do whatever they wanted, take whatever they wanted. They thought no one would stop them. But she had stopped him. She had done something. She hadn't looked away. She hadn't pretended not to see. She had spoken up. And that had made all the difference. She grabbed a towel, dried her face, and took a deep breath. The night was over. Tomorrow the sun will rise again. She had school. Basketball practice. Just another normal day. But now she knew something she hadn't realized before. She was strong. She was brave. And she wasn't afraid. Somewhere in the city, John Cena and Dwayne Johnson were probably back to their normal lives, maybe even joking about the fight. But for Clara, this night would stay with her. Not because of the fear. Not because of the danger. But because she had learned something important. Being strong isn't about having big muscles. It's not about never being afraid. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. And she had done exactly that. She took one last look out her window at the quiet street. Then she turned off the lights and went to bed. Justice had been served. But one question remained. What does it really mean to be strong? Sometimes real strength isn't about power. It's about courage. It's about standing up for what's right, no matter the odds. This was more than just a fight. It was a lesson in bravery. If you enjoyed this story, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more exciting stories filled with adventure, mystery, and unforgettable moments. Your support means the world. It keeps these stories coming and the creativity flowing. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.